need me to repeat something, just tell me. I'll do my best to sound like I'm from here. I've been here since July, so not too very long, but long enough to make it up. If I don't know it, just don't tell my boss. So this is the oldest commissioned warship afloat. How many of y'all have been here? Just a couple? What can you tell me about it? What can you tell me about it?
Undefeated in battle.
See, she knows more than me. How you gonna let that happen? Alright, so that is right. We are 33-0. It is commissioned because everybody here is active duty Navy. It's a warship, obviously 33-0, and it's on water, so it's afloat. We have the HMS Victory over in England beat only because she's in dry dock. The Victory is older than this ship, but we are still floating, so we still have that title. She was launched right over there at that building with like the curvy roof. That was Edmund Hart Shipyard. Now it is the Coast Guard base. So they brought her back home as close as possible, and so we put her in the Navy Yard now instead. And I'll tell y'all more about the ship when we get up there, but first a few safety rules. Please no climbing, jumping, anything that's going to send you to the hospital. I don't want to call 911 today. And please don't run, especially with it being wet. When you go down the ladder rails, go down backwards, treat it as a ladder. The decks do get shorter as we go down. The shortest one is 5'4". You're going to struggle. That dude's going to struggle. These kids are fine. You're fine. So just watch your head, watch your footing, and we're going to go through one deck at a time. If y'all have questions along the way, feel free to ask, and then we'll get y'all started. So if y'all want to go ahead and start walking up there and meet me on the top deck, I'll be up there right behind you. Alright, so I know they're working. I'm going to try to be loud. There's a bunch of maintenance going on. They're just trying to fix all the wear and tear that's happening. Right now, they're actually working on this main mast. They took down a piece of it, and they're in the process of putting it back up. So, like I said, the oldest commissioned warship afloat, she turned 225 on October 21st of last year. So, 225 years ago, she was launched into the water. She is 8 to 15% original. That original piece is under the waterline. It's the keel of the ship, if anybody knows about that. It's pretty much the backbone. It's the first piece that's laid when they lay a ship down. So that's what keeps her the Constitution. They brought her back here, and this is her primary home. She is still an active warship. She is still in the Navy. But obviously, we're not going to take a wooden ship out to war when we have things like the destroyers out there and aircraft carriers. This one would take 2 men. It would not be effective. There's not missiles on here. So, but we still do have her because this is the foundation of the Navy. This is one of the 2 out of the 6 original that are left. The other one's in Baltimore, Maryland. It's the USS Constitution. It was turned into a 22 gun sloop. So obviously that was not going to be very effective in war either. It's also still a wooden ship. So we still do have this one today. This is pretty much like a prized possession for the Navy. So we still have to promote it. So for all y'all who came here, make sure y'all do it too. Y'all might be in the Navy one day. I see you looking. Alright, so everybody wants to know like the best part about being stationed on the Constitution. My favorite personally is climbing. So obviously it's a sailboat, right? We still climb and let the sails down today. They're not on because snow season in Massachusetts, if y'all are from here, you know, it gets pretty bad. From 150 feet and it falling, it's gonna hurt. So we take the sails off, and that also keeps like the weight off of the yard so it doesn't rot the mast or anything like that as well. But in the summertime, we'll climb up 150 feet and let the sails down, and make sure squirrels haven't chewed holes in it, repair it if we need to. But we kind of like to keep the tradition alive. So what we do is we climb up all the black ropes that you see. It makes me think I'm on a pirate ship. So we climb up that, and then we go out on these black yard arms. There's one actually behind y'all that they took off of the main mast. We climb up on that about inch thick foot rope, and we hang over it. Luckily we do have harnesses. They did not in the 1800s. So we still do have those. And then we'll let them down and bring it back up. We go underway about 6-7 times a year. This year I think we're going 6. So we still do go out. We still do let the sails down when we go out. Does anybody know the nickname? I didn't get to that part. What's the nickname?
Old Ironsides.
See, the people who ain't even been here know this. Where's my people from here? Where's that Okay, anyway, so yeah, so her name's Old Ironsides. Do you know how she got that name? Okay, so her most famous battle is the War of 1812. At the beginning of that war, Captain Isaac Cole went out with no official orders, pretty much to reclaim his name, because a month prior to that, he ran away from 5 British ships. Obviously, one ship cannot shoot down 5, right? So we ran away, and he wanted to claim his name. He went back out, and on the edge of Canada, we rode up on the HMS Guerriere, and they started shooting at us. Carpenters were walking around, sailors were walking around. They was like, well, we know they're shooting at us, but what's happening? There was no holes, nothing was leaking. So one of the sailors jumped up on the side of the ship up here and seen that the cannonballs were pretty much just bouncing off the side like a bouncy ball. And he said, huzzah, her sides are made of iron. It is in fact wood, in case you didn't gather that. But it is wood, not iron. So Captain Isaac Cole named her Old Ironsides. Is there anybody in the Army here or was in the Army? No? Oh, behind you. See, you got me messed up. You're not Ironsides. Sorry to put that out. So that's her nickname, and that's what it's been. That's what it's going to stay. And that is her most famous battle in the War of 1812. So we reclaimed our name. We took down the Guerriere, and that was one of our first battles that we had won. She is 33-0, so we will never lose again because she's not going back out. But so there's that. They actually did just put the ship wheel back on yesterday. So take a picture with it. I know the guys are working, but I became a photographer working here, so if y'all need help with angles, I got it. Other than the climbing and everything, I think that's about it. Oh, no. Bathroom. Does anybody know where the bathroom's at? Was you up there reading? You read this on, didn't you?
It's at the head. Head of the ship.
Yeah, okay. So in the Navy, we call the bathroom the head. And it actually came from this ship all the way up there where it like comes to a point. That is where they would use the toilet. So they had like just holes in the front of the ship that they would show everybody their business. And it went straight down into the ocean. It's at the head of the ship, and this deck is also called the poop deck. So that's kind of where that came from, but that's supposed to be at the back of the ship. So our job primarily was to feed the fish, I'm assuming. Other than that, I'm going to take y'all downstairs and show you the gun, get y'all out the cold, try to get away from the noise. So just be careful going down the ladder rails, go down backwards, and then if y'all have questions about this deck, you can ask me down there. Those work, and then there's those back there also. It's called the gun deck for the guns. She is rated for 44 guns. She's a 44 gun frigate. A frigate is a 1 gun covered deck with at least 3 masts. So we got that covered. This deck's covered, obviously. But I don't think there's any in the Navy anymore that they like make like this. So what most people want to know about is the guns. Does anybody know the difference in a gun and a cannon? No? Okay. So a gun is on the ship. Once you take it off the land, it is now a gun. When it's on land, it's a cannon. They're the exact same thing. So these are long guns. The ones up there are carronades. The ones up there weigh 2,200 pounds. They look small, but they still weigh a lot. They take 6 to 9 men to man, and they shoot a 32-pound shot, so it's this big one right here. These ones weigh 6,500 pounds. So they triple it. This is our main line of defense. These ones will go 1,200 yards. So for those who watch football, you like baseball. For those who like football, it's 12 football fields. And then the ones up there go 400 yards, so 4 football fields. So that red building on this side, we could hit them. These go a little farther, so obviously we're going to use these first. We don't want to get any closer than we have to. The way these work, they're front loaded, so you had to pull it in, put your gunpowder in, put your shot in, then push it back out. The way you pulled the ropes on the side would turn it left to right, and then the wedge underneath it, it's called a coin. I don't pay the price, maybe? I don't know. You put the wedge under, the coin under it, and that aims it up or down. The only sight that they had was the square that you see in front of them. So these men had to be very accurate. Can anybody guess how long it took to load and fire these guns? How long's a while? How long did you say?
2 minutes. 5 minutes.
Kinda. So we done it in 90 seconds. The British done it in 3 minutes. So we had their time cut in half. These men were always training on these. They were always getting as accurate as they could. You was right in the middle. I'll give you credit. So they were always training, like when we weren't at war, they were out here doing everything they could to improve themselves. So 9 to 15 men on these, they would be pulling it in, pushing it back out 6,500 pounds at a time. So these men done a lot of manual labor on top of having to climb, and climbing's a lot harder than it looks. I don't know if y'all like go hiking or anything, but it's hiking times 20. So we do that, and then they would do this also. So these men had a lot of work to do. They also had to raise and lower the anchor with that big round thing in the middle back there. It's called a capstan. They would have pretty much sticks in it, and they would push it in a circle to raise the anchor that weighs 6,000 pounds. Some of them were 8,000. So it took a lot of manual labor for these men, but they were smart and they done what they could with what they had. And also the matchstick that's sitting right here is what would use to be firing it. The end with the nail on it, pretty much. You would stick down in the top to put a hole in the gunpowder bag, and then put a trail of gunpowder up to the top, because you can't just like drop a match down in there. And then this end would be lit, and they would stand to the side and fire it. Because it weighs 6,500 pounds, you don't want to stand behind it. Most people, when they think about a gun or a cannon, they think about just the cannonballs. There is a 24 and a 32 pound shot, but there was other ones as well. This one right here is a double-headed mass shot. So it's a cannonball cut in half with a rod in the middle. When it comes out, it just spins. That way you can cover more surface area that way, because the mass do get smaller as you go up. So they want to hit as much as they can. They don't want to destroy the ship so we can capture it, but they do want to make it inoperable. These two right here are anti-personnel. So this one is a bunch of these 2-pound shots tied together to look like grapes. And then this one has any sharp items that they could find, glass, nails, anything broken that's going to hurt somebody. They would all put it in here and knock out as many people as they could with one shot, then, you know, one big ball going to one person that may or may not hit them. This one's called a star shot. When it opens up, it comes 4 ways and it looks like a ninja star. And it puts holes in the cells. If there's holes in your cells, it's not going to catch wind. You're going to be stuck going in circles, or you're just going to not move. So they done that just so we could get closer to their ship so we can board it. This one is kind of the same thing, except for it gets tangled up in all the rigging and all the lines. That way you can't move your sails. If it's tangled, it's trying to get a knot out of your hair that's stuck. So that's what this was used for. It looks like nunchucks, but Jackie Chan I don't think's been here, so I know it wasn't his. Yeah, so these are all the different shots that they used. But like I said, if you don't want to stand behind it, but if you did, you became a cook. They didn't kick you out the Navy back then like they do now. They would just have you looking like a flamingo cooking. So back there, up there, in the middle is that big black furnace looking thing. That's exactly what that is. It's their oven. It was not coal powered. It was not a steamboat or anything like that. They fired that up once a day to cook their one hot meal they got. The rest of the time it was leftovers. These men did not have good diets at all. Obviously, when you're out to sea, your fruits and veggies are going to go bad, so they did not get many of those unless they were import. They did have this meat that they ate. It's called salt junk. Who knows anything about preserving meat? No? Okay. I figured you know all of it. So they use a lot of salt. It was 2 parts salt, 1 part meat. And then they would try to soak off as much salt as they could before they cooked it, but obviously you're not going to get it all out. And then they would have this thing called a ship's biscuit. Have any of y'all been to the museum yet? No? Look, I know it's early, but y'all gotta come on. Okay, so in the upstairs of the museum, there's a ship's biscuit up there that was like baked, I don't know, a lot of years ago, older than me. And it still looks like it was just made. So that tells you how many preservatives are in it. I wouldn't want to eat it. They actually made some for us last October-ish. You have to use super water to soften it. It is not good. I would not suggest eating those. But that's what their diet was on top of 1 gallon of water. Their water came from that scuttlebutt right behind y'all over there. Does anybody know? Thank you. See, he's in it. Does anybody know where the term scuttlebutt, like what it means? No? Okay, so a scuttle is a hole or opening, so it's just a hole in that or the holes on the sides of the ships. And then a butt is actually a unit of measurement. So if anybody's ever heard of somebody say a buttload, or you say it, it's actually either 125 or 140 gallons depending on when that barrel was made. So there actually is a limit to that. So scuttlebutt is from there. They only got the 1 gallon of water a day. And then they also got 1 pint of grog. Does anybody know what grog is?
Whatever alcohol you
Yes, I know you're an alcoholic now. You just told on yourself. All right, so this is whiskey or rum mixed with water, and then any citrusy fruits that they had, they would put in there too to help with any diseases they incurred from their poor diet. They got a cup at lunch and a cup at dinner, and a Marine had to disperse it because there was about 500 men on board. About 50 of them were Marines. They done our grunt work that we didn't want to do, just like they still do now. If there's any here, don't kill me. So they had to disperse it to us because if y'all know anything about sailors, we cannot be trusted with alcohol. So they had to make sure we weren't getting drunk. That is also the reason we can't drink on ships anymore. I think after like 63 days out without going into a port anywhere now, you get 2 hot beers that you have to drink in, like right where you get them. But other than that, you don't drink on board because of the men in the 1800s. So that's kind of a good thing, I guess. But yeah. All right. So do y'all have any questions on this deck? Okay. So back in that back room, that is the captain's cabin. The captain is bougie and he gets what he wants. So he got his own room. He got his own space. That used to be one big open room. They are actually doing construction, so it's not as pretty as it would have been a couple weeks ago. But that's where the captain would sleep. It used to be one bed in there. You could take down that wall. There's 3 gun ports back there as well. That way if we needed to shoot them from the back, we could. But we've had a bunch of important people come on the ship. Queen Elizabeth's been here. The Pope's been here. Senators. All these different important people have been here, and the captain had to give up his bed. And if you're anything like me, I'm not trying to sleep on the floor. So the captain made them put 2 beds back there. That way he had his own and then one for any guests that came on board. And then their toilets are on the extra room on the side back there. But that's where he slept. If you went back there as an enlisted, you knew you were in trouble. You went to captain's mast. They didn't have a jail back then, but you would go to captain's mast, do kind of the same process that we do now. But we can get our pay taken or anything like that, or have to do extra work. Back then, they would get flogged, which is where they would tie you to the mast and like whip you in the back pretty much. That got abolished, thankfully. Or they would take your pay, they would even take your food, or they would make you hang upside down in the head and make you clean off the ship what the waves did not clean off. So I'll just stick to cleaning the toilet in my house. But that's the captain's cabin, and if y'all don't have anything else on this deck, I'm going to take y'all down to the last one and show y'all where they slept and ate. And then if y'all have any final questions, I answer them down there. So just be careful, it is 5'4" down there. It's shorter, there's a couple chairs if y'all need to sit down. But I'll meet y'all down there on that deck. Where you sleep is pretty much your bedroom. The berthings now on the ships that we have, they are coffin wrapped, so it's like a twin size bed that you can lift up with storage space. They put those about 3 high and about 15 in a room, so you have no privacy there either, but at least you know you are above or below somebody, not side by side. Back then, all they had were hammocks, so the ones that you see hanging up there are the ones that they would have had back then. All the way forward, you would have your sick bay, so pretty much kind of like your hospital in a way. They would put like a canvas down, and if you were sick, they quarantined you for my COVID babies. I don't know if any of y'all got quarantined. So that's pretty much what that was, and then up to about where that line is, that's where all the enlisted would sleep. So me and my peasant self gets to sleep up there. On the center line of the ship, so in the middle, that's where the most junior sailors would sleep. If you haven't been out to sea yet, you would want to sleep in the middle. So you didn't get seasick, you wouldn't rock as much. And then the ones who have already been out would sleep on the sides. I like to say they like to get rocked to sleep because you're just going to be sweating all night. And like I said, they only had a gallon of water a day. Do you think they showered, or do you think they drank it? See, y'all listen. Yesterday I asked that, and they said, yeah, they showered. No, they didn't. So they probably didn't shower, so it's already stinky enough. They don't want the seasickness on top of that. And the only ventilation they had were these air ports on the side. So obviously the more senior enlisted would want to sleep as close to the ventilation as they could. And then about where all y'all were standing, that's where the Marines would be. Like I said earlier, you know, they kind of done what we didn't want to do. So they also kept the peace between enlisted and officers. So they also slept in between us in case things were to happen. About where we all are now, this is where the midshipmen would sleep. There was actually a wall put up And they slept right outside of the officers. They worked under them, so if they needed to run and help any of the officers with anything, they were right here. They could just go in there. And then back there on the starboard side or the right side, so over here, that's where your commissioned officers would sleep. So your first through fifth lieutenant slept there. Your first lieutenant is equivalent to the executive officer, if y'all know anything about that. And then on the other side would be your chief warrant officers. So it was officers that weren't necessarily commissioned, but they had a higher level of education in some field. So like your carpenter, your surgeon, your chaplain, your boatswain, anybody like that knew more and were experienced in the field with some education, they put in there. They weren't like the captain. They didn't necessarily get their own bed. They still did get a hammock, but they had their own space in their own room. That's also where they held all of their meetings and things like that. And if you weren't necessarily going to captain's mast, but you were still in trouble, you also went in there and had to deal with all the other officers. So those are called knees. I know, me being 200 pounds, I need a little bit of support. That's what these are. These are underneath one of the guns on the deck above us.
No.
It's just a little extra support for the over 6,000 pounds that it has to hold. But they would eat picnic style in between it 3 times a day, 8, 12, and then 16 or 4 p.m. Eat their food, roll it up, and stow it away. I was making sure that wasn't me, sorry. And then other than that, they didn't do much on this deck other than sleep 4 hours and get up and go back to work. So they done 4-hour rotations of sleep. That's all they got a day. About 120-ish of the 500 could sleep down here at a time. So hammocks were strung all the way throughout. They literally slept that close together, so shoulder to shoulder. I think it's about 6 inches apart. So not only do you have to smell them being sneaky, you got to listen to them snore and toss and turn on out as well. And if you roll over, you're probably going to fall on them. Probably not very fun, but for only 4 hours and all the hard work you had to do, you're probably going to be knocked out and not care. And then there is one more deck below us. It is roped off, but that is called the Orlop deck. Does anybody know Dutch? No? Me either, but I was told it stands for overlapping. So there is a platform that comes out, which you can see on this side, and then the rest of it, is shaped like a V, like the bottom of a boat. That is for storage. If y'all can see down this ladder well back here, that is where the surgeon's cockpit was, hence why the reddest floor. The floor is red? See, nobody caught that. That's why the floor is red. The only thing that the surgeon was equipped with was pretty much just a piece of plywood and like a hacksaw. They did not have the technology that we did, so they had to use what they could gather from that. He had to do surgery on his knee also, so it was uncomfortable for the patient and for him. But as soon as he was going to, he sent you all the way forward.